Welcome to Symposium of Wild Hearts. I am your guide and host, Aisha Ophelia, and I am overjoyed to have Lee Harris sitting across from me today. Lee is what I consider to be a multi-passionate healer. He's a mentor, an author, a speaker, and a channel. Just want to welcome Lee to the symposium.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you and be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited. One thing I've been doing to start off all these sessions is just kind of a heartfelt check-in. And so for the people that are listening or driving, just follow along to the best of your ability. But I'm just going to ask everyone just to flutter your eyes closed for a moment, just to check in. So if you'd like to just take a deep breath and sigh it out, I always enjoy that. My nervous system seems to just relax when I do that. And so what we're doing in this space is really just listening and getting curious about what we feel. And really just looking at ourselves through the lens of a loving parent to a child. Maybe you sense some discomfort, but you can just breathe into it. Maybe there's excitement in the room. Maybe there's a message that's been waiting for you just to get still enough to notice. But whatever it is, just being with what's here for you. And if you need more time in this space, feel free to pause or add in a ritual of your choice. For the rest of us, we're going to take 2 deep breaths together and just sigh it out. So just in through the belly and out through the mouth. Let's do one more of those. In through the belly and out through the mouth. And then when you're ready, just fluttering your eyes back open and coming back to the here and the now. Thank you. I always am able to just catch up with my spirit when I do that, and hope people,
Thank you.
Yeah, people find that space before we get into this conversation that we're going to have. And so, in preparing for this and doing a little bit of research on you, I saw that you got started in 2004. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the word humble beginnings came to me. And so I would love to start off there, because people seem to think when they see someone who's in the public eye that there isn't much fear to move through or anxiety. We look at people like you and we're like, okay, this person's got it all together, you know?
Yeah.
So I'd love to get a snapshot of Lee back then. And, you know, you can throw in some stories, whatever it is, to kind of catch us up to how you became the person that's sitting in front of me right now.
Well, Lee back then would have been absolutely terrified at Lee in 2018 and the situation he has going on. He would have looked at it and felt completely overwhelmed and out of his depth. And Lee in 2018 is occasionally feeling overwhelmed or out of his depth as he walks towards 2020 and 2022. And you know, that's one of the things I love to talk about with people, because I think all of us have a perception of what it is to be someone else or what someone else is doing that isn't actually true. And for me, doing this kind of work, whether you're a change maker or a healer or an activist, your personal growth has to happen alongside your purpose. And I don't think the two can ever be separated. So you could be doing something in work that you're kind of dead in, and you're not feeling anything, and you're not challenged, and you're not going through fears. Or you can feel alive with the work that you're doing, and like your own identity and your own life journey, it's going to change, it's going to shift, you're going to shift with it. So yeah, back in 2004, I was someone who had been channeling for a few years, and I had several friends who were open, who were spiritual, who I would help. And they knew that if they asked me some questions, that I would tell them what I got, and usually it would help them. And then one of them challenged me. She was a yoga teacher and a shaman. Her name is Anaya Sophia. And she now has books and all kinds of stuff. But at the time, She was working in a local yoga center. I was going to her Kundalini yoga classes. We became friends. And over coffee, I helped her with something she had going on with a partner she was with. And she came back to me the next day and said, "Oh my God, that really transformed everything for the two of us. Thank you. You should do this." So she said, "I'll send out a message about you to my newsletter of 300 people." And I was like, "Oh my God, 300 people, a newsletter with 300 people. Oh my God." And she said, "Could you do this for the public?" And I said, "Well, I've never done it for anyone I'm not in the room with. So I don't know, but maybe if they sent me 3 questions, I could try." And at the time, I was doing a series of self-growth workshops with a group called Psychology of Vision. It's not dissimilar to Landmark Forum,
Okay.
in terms of the kind of stuff they get you to look at. And fear was one of the things I was working on. And so I knew I had to say yes, even though it scared me. But I really didn't think anyone would come. And 60 days later, I'd had 60 clients.
Oh my goodness.
And I think that the reason I think that happened was because I was testing something for myself and because I didn't know the value of it for others. I knew the value of it for the people I was with, but this was very untested. I just did it on a donation basis. So I think there was no risk for other people because they knew they could give me $10 or $15 or whatever. And most people gave me more, which was very nice. But yeah, it spread from friend to friend. And yeah, that was 14 years ago. And now I look back and my mind is blown. But I remember at the time being terrified. Even the first phone call, the really sweet guy called Colin, who called me to give me his 3 questions, there was like a split personality going on for me. And there was the front me who was, respecting the fact that he was being vulnerable enough to call me and give me these questions. So I was very professional. I wrote down his questions and I said, I should be able to do it within the next 24 hours. And then there was behind the scenes me who was like, I can't believe this. What am I doing? What if I screw this up? What if I can't do anything for him? The weight of responsibility and the idea of getting it wrong or interfering with somebody in a way that wouldn't be helpful to them. So, and I feel like that goes with you your whole career. It's just, you learn to manage it, and perhaps bigger tests come where the same energy will rise in a different way. So that's the one thing that's really helped me with my intuition. It's like I can always check my higher self's answer, even if my lower or smaller self is freaking out about something like, oh my God, can I do this? It's like my higher self says, yes, you can, it will work. And that has always been true. So it helps lead me forward at the moments I need to kind of say yes when another part of me wants to say no and run.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that and for sharing those 2 little snapshots of, even Lee now, who has a bigger following, who's done a lot of things, 15 years of being a healer. It's comforting to know, because working through my own personal fears has been a big thing. And the people that write to me, and, a big part of this audience is working through their own set of fears in order to arrive at the place, excuse me, that they. But there's a lot of people who are working through the fears of just showing up and being seen and having a message. And that's something that we talked about. And I loved seeing you in Austin because your message was, the time, can you say it? The time is now.
You are needed, and now is your time.
Yes, exactly.
And that came through my guide. So I call my guides the Z's because the name that was first given to me was Zachary. And they said, we don't have names, but we'll give you names that you would understand, because we know that, humans need names. So there are several names in the collective, and they all began with Z. And so what I started to do is just refer to them as the Z's. And whenever I would channel last year, or wherever I was in the world doing a live event, this message just kept coming and kept coming. You are needed, and now is your time. And I feel, and I'm not alone in this, I'm seeing lots of people feeling this. People who identify as light workers, healers, sensitives, people who are awake. Perhaps for many years, being awake was enough, or increasing how awake you felt was enough. But this to me is a real rubber meets the road time on earth, where this is why we woke up. And I think sometimes there can be a priority around your spirituality, your meditation, your wakefulness versus our humanness. And in reality, our planet is going through this massive transition. And so are we as human beings and awakened beings, or whatever you want to call yourself. And you are needed, and now is your time, is a reminder that all of us have a puzzle piece for this time. So for you, one of your puzzle pieces is you doing what you're doing right now with this summit, and the importance of bringing that to people, and how that's going to be a baton that you can hand, that someone else can grab and run with, and they get the power from this to go and work in their community and volunteer helping in a crisis area, or teaching so that other people can go and help. And to me, that's really what the Z's were trying to say. Don't diminish you and your puzzle piece because you either feel overwhelmed by the world, or you've got it in your head that you need to save the world, which none of us can. We can just focus on our one piece, where we feel next led to offer, to bring, to serve. And equally, where do we receive, and where do we grow, and where do we learn? Because I think many healers, I've seen this a lot, and I think this was true for me more years ago. There can be a way of being in service as a way of feeling part of the world, but it can be a little edgy to kind of sit with your own self-growth. Now, that probably isn't true for many people listening to this, but I've certainly met the healer who only wants to heal others, and they want to avoid what's going on with them because there's a certain amount of pain they don't know how to process. So they're projecting it out. And I have no judgment on that. I understand it. And I definitely go back in my own history and think there was a truth in that for me many years ago, before I got capable of sitting with my own stuff. So you are needed, and now is your time more than ever.
Yeah, I love that message. And I also picture that the Z's are wearing like leather jackets for some reason. They're just like super cool, because I just haven't heard a name like that. And another piece of that message that I really love is this very practical piece about getting going on whatever it is for you. And another thing that we sort of have touched on was just, you know, the idea of demystifying things. Like social media is this whole thing, and we see people and we have this idea about who they are and how it operates. And one thing that we had talked about was vulnerability. So even in just, you know, having this conversation and disclosing your own fears, I feel like it's really helpful to people. And anyone that identifies as somewhat, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, just someone that likes to be behind the scenes, or someone that gets their energy from being alone. You know, how do we navigate this vulnerability piece that I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. So do you mean people who get their energy from being alone, who might want to put themselves out into the world?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They have a message, they want it out there, they know that they've got to be the ones doing it. How do we navigate through that piece?
Okay, well, and I love this question because I've had so many people ask me this when I've worked with them over the years. They've said, I feel compelled to do this, but I'm scared and I'm shy, and I get it. And one of the things I talk about, just for me personally, is I'm a little bit more on the extrovert scale than the introvert scale, but I'm not a complete extrovert. I'm definitely an EI with a leaning towards the E, because I like people, I like community, I like social. However, I suffer if I don't take time alone and quiet time. And I certainly, one of the things that I've learned with having a more public job is, you know, you're having a public job when you're doing it, but then you're in the grocery store buying paper towels, or you're getting that difficult phone call from home. And I think some people get it skewy in their head. They go, oh my God, well, if I was doing something in the public arena, then I'm going to have to lose my quiet time, or I'm going to have to lose my life. And it's just not true. It's, you may have work out there that's working for you on your behalf while you're not even there. You might be asleep and someone is listening to or watching something or reading something that you have done. That's what I love about how the internet is giving everyone a platform to share with each other, and this global conversation that can happen. But I think two things. Sensitives get scared of what they will feel psychically. And definitely for me, when I first started putting the energy update videos out, I would feel a bit weird for about the first 24 to 48 hours after one of those videos went out and people were consuming them. And that was with me avoiding looking at comments at the time. You know, that was me. I would throw it out, it would go live, and I would go, oh, I'm just going to disappear for a day or two because I don't want to deal with it. but I would feel stuff. And that changed. You know, you learn, it's like a muscle. You learn, okay, this is me doing this. And then after this, I will be quiet. And you go in and out of those two things and you learn to move between the two states. But I also feel people feel like they have to be beholden to the work that they do all of the time. If someone stops me in the grocery store and I'm buying paper towels, I don't suddenly start going into energy intuitive mode. I'm buying, this is paper towel moment. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So if you meet me in paper towel moment, that's who you're going to meet. I'm looking at the discount. I'm working, oh, this
yeah.
one's cheaper. You know what I mean? So
Totally.
that's who, and there was a time at the beginning, I think, when people would recognize me that I used to think I was beholden to being him, you know, the person that they were
Yeah,
hoping was going to start talking about energy. And that's, you know, you do your job, you offer something, and really when you meet people, really they want you to listen. Actually,
yeah,
very few people who meet you want to talk to you about anything other than they want to be heard by you. So even that can be weirdly introverted. That was the thing I've learned. I can be quite introverted if someone meets me in the outside world, because really they're just going to want to talk to me and all I have to do is listen and then, you know,
yeah,
give them a hug and say goodbye and move on. So I think the psychic side for people comes up. They're like, how will I deal with people feeling what I've put out? Or, you know, and that's just an energetic thing for people who are wired with a certain intuition, and you completely get used to it. The other side is dealing with trolls, dealing with judgment, and you get used to that too, and you learn to not personalize anything. And if you do personalize any negative comment, it's a great opportunity for self-growth. It's like, oh, that's interesting. This woman thinks I talk too much and I could get more to the point. That
hmm,
hurts. Oh, maybe I think that too, you know. So then you sit with that, and that's kind of useful. But you get through that too. So you don't have to hire out your introvert to other people in order to let your extrovert, who feels like they do want to go and connect with people, have that moment. You just learn the balance.
yeah. I love it that we're talking about this because sometimes in life we think, okay, so there's this one story about, you know, if I do it, it's going to be like this. But really, there's so many other possibilities for how you can even share. If you want to do a podcast and that's your way of service, there's a whole chunk of things that you can avoid by doing that. And not that you're looking to sort of, you know, slide in and out and avoid things, but there's just so many different ways that people can serve. And you know, it's good to know that it's not just the one story in your head that you have. Well, if I get out there, I'm going to have to endure this and this is going to happen. So thank you for sharing that. And I just realized that I skipped a huge part of the beginning. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say it's a really good point, and it's important to remember that you don't, because I'm really talking about being on camera, and I will say for me, people recognizing me shifted immediately when I started being on video, because on video you're
Yeah.
really recognizable. People see all the things you do with your face. A photo, if they see you in person, they might not know. So I think that's a really important message that you can choose whether you want to write or do a podcast or a video. But what I wanted to say was, I think also we're in the age where this is becoming more normal. You
Yeah.
know, many of us grew up with this whole celebrity notion where there were a small amount of people who were visible to us because they had a public job or they were a politician or they were a favorite author. And that's really just changing. Like, you know, 10, 20 years from now, that paradigm's just not even going to be in people's heads. So I think some of the fear comes from people's ideas. Like you said, they blow it up. Oh my God, well, if I'm known by millions of people, you might be known by thousands of people, which is very different.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
internet fame is a different kind of fame to the fame we grew up with. And I don't think it has half as many consequences or things to fear, because you tend to be known by people who resonate with you versus, you know, mainstream mega fame, which is, you know, its own can of worms.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you for saying that. There was a huge part that I just skipped, and I'm wondering if we can sort of pause this part. We'll come back to it. I'd love to pick up on, we talked about talking about owning your value, and I think that would be something of great value for people who are watching. But there's a little game that I forgot to play with you, and I've been doing it with everyone else, so I don't want you to miss out on it because it's super fun. But I got the idea from Jimmy Fallon's show. He does this game called Think Fast, and it's a good way just to get the energy flowing. I mean, it's totally already flowing, but game to play. It's just 11 questions, and the way that it works is it's rapid fire. So no answers. Ask it, basically answer. So don't think about it too long. Just like let whatever comes out fly.
Okay.
Are you game?
I'm game.
Okay. Okay, cool. It's a way for people to get to know you if they don't. Question 1. This one's a fill in the blank, and it's men just want.
Oh, you broke up. I heard men just.
Okay, yeah, because you froze too. It's men just want to fill in the blank.
Feel safe.
Okay. What is the rooster really saying when it's crowing?
What the hell is this planet?
Say something funny.
Ah!
Oh my God. What's something cool I can buy for $1?
A stick of incense.
Oh, I like that. Hum your favorite song.
I
was going to try to guess it. I don't think I know
it's
it.
my recent favorite song, Lana Del Rey, Love.
Oh, nice. Okay, we'll have to check that one. Where do you feel most alive?
When or where?
Where?
In my art barn. I have a barn, an art studio. In my art barn, I feel very alive there.
Nice. What's God's deal?
He's having a good laugh at how much we're messing this whole thing up when it comes to religion and ideology.
Oh, goodness. Maybe we'll unpack
He or
that
she,
later.
I should say. He or she.
Yeah, yeah. Why are you so relieved?
Because the worst didn't happen, and if I could go back and tell my 20-year-old self the worst ain't gonna happen, yeah, that's why I feel relieved at 42.
I love it. What sound do snails make?
An aggressive one.
How does your heart feel right now?
Happy.
Fill in the blank. Curiosity is
Fascinating and enlivening.
Thank you. That was the 11 questions. Thank you for
That's
letting me go
great.
back.
That's very fun.
I was like, I missed something. And then, yeah,
That's
it
great.
occurred to me that I didn't play that game with you.
That's great. By the way,
yeah,
just to let you know, your beautiful hair, we talked to the mic
okay.
just before we started. It's kind of, I can hear it cracking and clacking on the mic, just in case
Okay.
in case you're worried about that. Yeah.
I'm gonna put it here.
That's cool, because
Okay,
it's a shame to put your hair away again. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So it's kind of switching. Yeah, so kind of switching gears back into, we had touched a little bit on vulnerability and moving through fears of being seen. And then there's a big conversation about owning your value that I'd love to just get into for a little bit. There's many of us who are, learning what to charge for the first time and seeing so much that so many things go back to the way that we feel about ourselves, and not even just in charging, but, the type of clients we work with and the way that we allow people to talk to us. I just think this is a conversation that is so multifaceted and can help people in so many areas of their life.
Yeah. This is a really interesting area for me, because if I give you the kind of snapshot of what happened to me when I was doing these readings, there came a point when, I was doing the readings outside my work. And I think at the time I was just doing like an admin job for a friend. I was between jobs. And so I was earning about $15 an hour. So, a reading was, earning me on average $20 an hour, $25 an hour. And as they started to accrue and I got more demand, I realized I needed to slightly increase it, because basically it just got clear. But every time I increased the minimum, so when I made the minimum $15 and then the minimum $25 and then the minimum $35, I would go through such emotion, like my heart would, I'd get hot, and I would know I had to do it, and it was right to do it, and I was about to start doing the work full time too, and it was very clear it was having huge value for people. And the one thing that the donation basis taught me was some people would pay me, you know, $20 and they'd be super grateful. They'd say, I really don't have much money right now, but here's $20. Some people would pay me like 100 and that would blow my mind. And obviously for them, they either had more means or they were valuing it in a different way. Because, you know, I always remember as a younger person, I remember there was this girl who was a friend of a friend, and we were at this pub and we were all drinking whatever we were drinking. And I remember she was drinking large glasses of wine and she was probably on like her third. And I love film and I used to go to the cinema a lot. And I was saying, oh yeah, you should go and see that film. And she was like, oh, I can't afford to go to the cinema. And she just carried on. And cinema is, you know, the name for the movie theater in the UK.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, you know, she's on her third large glass of Chardonnay. She's got a very expensive handbag. And it wasn't that I disagreed with her not wanting to go to the cinema, but it was interesting that she said, I can't afford to go, which isn't actually true.
Yeah.
She was not choosing to spend her money at the cinema, whereas I valued the cinema. So to me, you know, $10 on the cinema ticket or whatever. So value is a highly personal thing. And when we start to stand for our own value, I think for me, because I was an intuitive and a healer, I was in a career that didn't really have a defined value around it. So it's not like, you know, when I was at career school, you know, or in the career class at school, they were like, and if you're an intuitive reader, this is what you should charge. You know, we all know what an accountant got or what a doctor got, but this is a very new paradigm. So I think, number one, if you're doing something that there haven't really been many models around you of value or success in that area, learning what you need to charge is a bit more amorphous and takes some time. Number two, more people are becoming entrepreneurs, and we've gone from being told what to do in school and being told what we're paid in careers and accepting what someone else is paying us. But all of a sudden, when you have to put the price on it yourself, it brings up all kinds of things. So for me, every time I raise my rates, I was like, oh God, what about the people who might not be able to afford me now, or da-da. But I needed to raise my rates because what I was beginning to do was produce more free work or very inexpensive work for people. So it was important for me to own my value as my journey grew and changed, and to let myself change and some of my connections change as my value changed. And I think there are all kinds of reasons we get stuck with it. As I've just mentioned, if it's an untested market or a career that you haven't really seen out there for many, many years. So there are lots of things, but it's really personal, and money is very emotional. And I think for a lot of people, it pushes on all kinds of self-worth stuff. So I always say, pay attention to the value your customer or client or audience are telling you they're getting. So if you're getting testimonials on your Facebook page, you know, oh, this just blew my mind. Thank you so much. I feel so much happier. This, you know, there's value in that for people. And I was someone who would always pay for readings, workshops. I was going to workshops on credit cards. So I really valued this work. But when it came to me charging for myself, I had some shit to go through. And you know, and each time I would push myself to raise my rate a bit or to align with things, it really showed me something. And then one last thing I'll say is, coming from the other side, you know, I do this training course called Impact the World, and it's really teaching people about how to present your work in the world. And one thing I've learned time and time again is you've got to get the value of your offering right. For example, I have a members club called The Portal. We priced it at $10 when we launched it, because in my mind, I was like, oh, this is super affordable. And that way, you know, that way more people will come. And they didn't at all. Because the price has to match the value for your customer or your client. So if they know they're getting something, they will buy it. And I know what I'm like. If I really need and want something, I will give the dollars that I feel it's worth. So one of the things about owning your value is in the early period of doing your work, pay attention to what people are saying about you that's consistent. Oh, right, my work always calms people down. Oh, the way I've spoken about nutrition, they said has helped them put the pieces together in a really fast way compared to all the books they've read. Okay, I've got something here. Now, how do I want to present it? and what's the price point I want to offer people. And I always say, if you're giving people value in free material, and this is how, you know, I would work as a consumer too, they won't hesitate when you bring out an offer or a service that they would like from you, because they already have trust of you. They're like, oh yeah, this person works for me. Her blog
Yeah.
always changes my world. Oh great, she's doing a course for writers. Well, she's a really good writer and I love her blogs and I want to improve. I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a puzzle, but it's a fascinating one to work out.
Yeah, and so that's so interesting that when you set the price, so this price for the portal is slightly higher now?
It's 15 and it's still underpriced because we've added
Uh-huh.
a lot of stuff to it. So we're about to
Okay.
put it up again, but we're gonna grandfather everyone in. So everyone who's been with us will stay at the 15 rate, and anyone going forward, and we're gonna make an announcement to the newsletter and tell everybody that we're doing it about a month ahead that we're doing it. So if they want to get in at this price, they can.
Yeah, and I was just really, you know, in my mind making the correlation between, you know, that perceived value, and almost like if it's too low, people may
Mhm.
not trust it, you know? It's so it's been such an interesting journey with me, along the same lines, and it's good to see that that there are demonstrated models of how we can continue to value our work, and if the prices need to, you know, to be raised, that there will be emotions, but that we can work through them.
Yeah, definitely. And know that you're going to change as you change your value in the outside world. It's going to change you. It's going to change your perception of yourself, and it's going to change the perception others have of you. And, you know, sometimes people can get a little shitty about money too. You know, you'll see that on the internet. You'll see one of the trolls, people who are sitting there with too many glasses of red wine or just a big old heap of bitterness,
Yeah,
or both. One of the things that they will aim at people in transformation work, I've seen a lot on various pages, is money. People
yeah,
get mad that you're charging money for services,
for
which
healing
is
work. Yeah,
so interesting because, you know, it's so funny. It's like we don't, I think if you look at it too, you know, the work of nurses is very undervalued in our society too. So
hmm,
there's kind of a feeling that, oh, you're supposed to, if you have a good heart, you should be working for free. Whereas if you're on Wall Street making a ton of money in a very unethical company, we'll accept that you're a
yeah,
multimillionaire or a billionaire. So value on the planet around money is imbalanced anyway. So you come up against your own imbalances in yourself, and sometimes imbalances get thrown at you, and people accuse you of making money for things that you shouldn't be making money for. Whereas really, they should not be focusing on their happiness. Will not come from belittling everyone who's making money. They should be figuring out why they're so unhappy that someone else is making money and going, oh, maybe I too should be doing something else.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because money doesn't buy you happiness, but it's a freedom. It's a freedom as a creative and as someone who is wanting to bring a certain level of work into the world.
hmm,
Having resources come in means you can actually do more and give more.
yeah. And I love it that this story it's being rewritten. So in many ways, you were talking about that there aren't many models for this, but even when I remember finding out about Danielle Laporte, I think, and I was like, oh my goodness, someone's doing a job of what I want to do. And, you know, there's been so much movement since then. I don't know, maybe 5-6 years. And I can just see that people are going to continue to trust it and to want to put their resources to it. So, you know, I like knowing that we can rewrite this story.
Yeah, and what she does is great. And I don't know her personally, but I've seen a few of her blogs and things, and I'll bet if you talk to her, you know, she would say, oh yeah, this was the point where I was like, and I loved what
Yeah.
Marie Forleo said about a year ago. And Marie has a very big following and business.
Hmm.
And she shared in a blog how she hit an upper limit problem one day. She was at a yoga class or something and she suddenly couldn't breathe and
Oh,
she didn't know
wow.
what was going on. And this went on for days. And this was only a year or so ago.
Uh-huh.
And when she really got to the bottom of it, she realized everything was successful, everything was going well, everything was on a new scale. And she hit a part of her body that couldn't quite be with it and take it in. And I think,
Vibrate with, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think what people don't think about often when they look at other people's work, and they, especially when things are successful, or have a large reach, is the amount of work that goes on a daily basis to present those front-facing things. The amount of cogs and wheels
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
repairing this part of the engine, and oh, what system do we need now? And the accountant going, we've hit a new financial level, so now we need to figure out all these systems. It's a lot more complicated than the glamorous Instagram post or the,
Exactly.
you know, oh, I just was on the Oprah show makes it all look, you know?
Yeah, it's good to remember that there's always a shadow to move through, no matter what level people arrive at. Um, so I know we were going to take some time, and you were going to do some channeling for us.
Mhm.
Do you feel like that would be a good time to do that now?
Yes, I can't believe the time has gone this quickly. Yeah.
And then I have a few questions too, but I know that you want to do a channeled message, and then will I have chance to ask questions at the end, or?
How would it be if we close with the channel, actually? Does that
Okay.
work for you? And
Yeah, that definitely works.
great.
Um, okay. Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that we haven't really touched on was, oh, actually, I do have a question for you. So there's some of my audience, when I posted a little thing saying that I was going to be interviewing you today. And there's a lot of people who are new to channeling who don't really understand what it was. And I offered a short explanation, but for the people who are watching who don't understand what channeling is, what do you tell people that's happening when you go into a channeled state?
So for me, channeling was hearing the voice of my guides. How it happened for me was I was 22 years old. I was on the London Underground tube train in Britain, and I was going to my job, and I was sorting through all the thoughts in my head. And usually those thoughts at that time were very self-doubt, low self-worth, problem-based thoughts. And from the left, I just very clearly heard this voice one morning, and it started answering, and it was things like, no, you've got that wrong, that's not actually true, here, this is what's true, and here's why. So at first, am I schizophrenic, what the hell's going on? And I had been taken to one channeler, and the channeler I'd been taken to, pretty common for channelers, he sat in a chair, he closed his eyes, he was a very nice man, and then when he channeled Hazin, who was who he channeled, he told me, his voice changed slightly, and it was very wise what came through. But I remember leaving the session, it was gifted to me by a friend, and thinking, why doesn't he's obviously just a wise man, why does he have to pretend that he's bringing through a guide? So I totally get the skepticism, but for me, they're always there, and I can always contact them. And for some people, it might be a guide, it might be that you feel like it's a guardian angel or a guide of yours. For other people, it might just be the voice of their higher self. They might go, oh, this is my higher voice, this is my intuition. For me, when I asked them, like, who are you? And they said, well, we're a collective of 88 beings, and we extend wider into source. So I have some kind of telepathic connection with them. And they are part of my higher self in some ways, but it also definitely feels like telepathic connection, which I believe we all have. And I'm sure if we were all invited to sit with this as kids, everybody would have some kind of ability to access information that's a little more up here and a little less riddled by all the stuff on the ground. So when I channel for people, you'll see in a moment, I close my eyes, my voice changes a little bit, and I let them come through. And what happens is I hear about the first 5 words in my head before I say those out loud, and then I don't hear anything else in advance, and the words just come through. But it's not a trance for me. There are some channelers who say, I don't remember anything. I won't really remember much about it afterwards, but it's kind of like I sit behind and I listen, and they just come through. So that's channeling for me.
Thank you for explaining that. Yeah, that's a much more clear and concise explanation than I gave. But I love the disclaimer that you gave. And I think for me, when I was getting into listening to more people who channel and reading books, for me, it was just like, is the information good? Even if it challenged some of my old beliefs, I definitely feel differently about it now. But for if anyone's watching and it challenges your beliefs, I just challenge you to take what you can and leave the rest.
Yeah, I think one of the shadow sides that I saw, I didn't know there was a channeling world because I wasn't into channeling. Like I wasn't looking to channel. I was into a lot of other things, but not this. but there is an energy effect that happens. And I feel it when I experience channeling from others that I'm aligned with, or when I do it myself. And they say that much of what they're bringing through is a vibration, and you're connecting with the vibration, and the words will help you unriddle the mind. But it really should be part of a balanced diet. The shadow I've seen in the channeling world, less so these days, but go back 10, 20 years, I'd see a lot of people giving their power away to a channeled entity and going, oh, well, the channel said this, but it's not working. And why I love these guys is they've always said, you're in charge. This is your life. We're just telling you what we're seeing from our perspective and how the energy of everything is working from our perspective. And we're not in the body, so we're not having to deal with the density that you are. So you must make your own choices. So channeling is a great extra piece of your life. So I love, for example, I go to the gym and work out to kind of keep my health up and get my endorphins going. And then if I'm struggling with something, I might just go, I'm just going to ask disease, and I type 3 lines from them into my iPhone notes app that gives me some clarity. And I'm like, oh yeah, that helps. Now I see it clearer. Great. I open out and I go back into my life. So as part of a balanced diet, channeling is a fantastic thing for your toolkit.
I love that. I love that balanced diet portion, and and that they are wanting to give you the sovereignty to pick, because you're in the human experience now. So I feel like that's key right now, because we've in some way given away our power for so long. And the information that I feel from my guides intuitively is just like, stand up, you're a part of this too, like regain your power. So thank you for saying that.
How often do you speak to yours?
Often these days. I think it's always been a part of my life, but for a while I didn't have a paradigm for it, and so I just kind of put it away. But really for the last, I don't know, in my 20s, I really started that journey. And just of late, even with the Symposium, I could feel their words. And sometimes I just write it down. It's not my words. It comes in out of nowhere. It's always pretty simple, but I'm definitely in that learning phase of who my guides are and how they speak to me and what works specifically for our relationship. So yeah.
I love that you say that, what works specifically for your relationship, because one of the things I remind people about their channeling or their higher messages is you've got to test it. Yeah. And I'll often meet people and they're like, oh, well, my guide said I should go to Brazil and live in Brazil for a year and everything would go well, and it's all kind of gone to shit, and I'm in Brazil and I'm having an awful time and I feel like I want to go home, but my guide said I'm supposed to stay here, and I'm like, well, then go home. I'm like, they're not, it's like it's a GPS, and the GPS will constantly reroute you, and there is no such linear destiny that cannot be changed or interrupted. Exactly. It might be that you just needed to go to Brazil to shake something up, or to trust yourself. So I love what you said about working out the relationship, because it really is about that. It's working out, okay, where does my higher self hit this self, and how do I move and be with it? Because it is a testing relation, like any relationship. It's
exactly. And mine know that I'm a little stubborn, so they know, like with the Symposium, I got that you're going to do an online summit, and I just wrote it down. I was like, I don't know. I work for a lot of people in the field. I just was like, I don't know if I want to do this. And a few days later, it was like, I just heard that you would do it differently. And that's like all they had to say. And then creatively, I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And I got really excited. And it just like, after that, it was like, bam, bam, bam. So they know.
Well, and I would love to say that to you, because you and I met in Austin and I loved your energy immediately. So when you reached out and said, oh, I'm going to do a summit, would you be part of it? I was immediately a yes. There was no hesitation because of you. And then, and I said this to you when we had a chat last week, I'm so impressed with the energy and the presentation of what you've gathered and the people. When I saw the lineup, because I didn't know anything about any of it, I just said yes.
Yeah.
I was like, this is beautiful, and it's real testament to your creativity and your energy. So I've seen a lot of summits over the years, but you're doing a fantastic job. So yeah, it's great.
Thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate that.
I also like hearing that you're stubborn. I get it.
Yeah, very, very. And I'm learning how to, release control and be a part of the flow and not try to just force so much. So it's working.
And sometimes stubbornness is a good thing for a creative, because it's a balance. Like a creative needs to be able to flow, but also direct and make things happen. And I definitely gave, even as a creative, especially as I started to collaborate with other people, I had to learn when not to give my power away to the group. When
Yeah.
something was coming through me that was, you know, because it's a fine balance. It's like,
That's
I'm
true.
very democratic, but actually where I'm going in the last year is realizing I have to steer things if it's going out in my name and my vibration, because there's
Exactly.
something that comes through me that I have to follow. That kind of, so it's an interesting one.
Yeah. I get what you mean. Those things that you're very sure about, you just got to
Yeah,
stay the course.
yeah,
So if you feel
great.
ready
Okay,
to, yeah.
I'm going to channel for you guys. I'm just going to grab a crystal. I always like holding a crystal when I channel too. It's something about the vibration. I definitely was someone who was judgmental of crystals in my early 20s. You know, I was like, oh, crystal people. And then as
Uh-huh.
soon as I started channeling, I just was drawn to them everywhere I went. And holding one for me was just like I don't need to hold one, but it kind of is a touchstone and a conduit. So yeah, the people who
Yeah.
are watching this or listening to this and are curious about channeling, you might have something ceremonial or something that's a touchstone for you around doing this. And I will quickly say before I channel, everybody can do it. So if you're sitting here going, can I just grab a pen and a paper or a keyboard and a note sheet on your computer and write at the top, what do I need to know today? Question mark.
Mm.
If you don't have a question, and then just write for 3 or 4 lines and don't think about it. Don't judge it and go, oh, I'm probably just making this up. Everybody's making it up when they're channeling it, because
Yeah.
we're all making everything up that we're actually choosing to do.
Exactly.
So if we
Yeah.
don't choose to, so I would say to everyone listening who's curious, who hasn't already got in touch with their own higher guidance or guides or whatever you feel it is, it's a really good thing to have in your pocket on a daily basis when you're navigating the world.
Thank you for that. I like
Okay.
that.
Ha, light hearts. That is who all of you are. You are using your light and your heart energy to create the new world. And many get very obsessed with the idea of creating the new world from a standpoint of hearing from many voices in your time on your planet that this is a transitionary time on Earth, and also wanting to push against those aspects of the Earth or life that you feel could be better, could be more enlightened. While both of these are valid reasons to want to create the new Earth, we would also remind you that this is what all humans do all of the time. Whether you were here in the 1800s, the 1900s, or this century, you are on an evolutionary path. And it is just that this time that you are all living in is a very fast cycle on Earth, 4 or 5 times the speed of anything that has gone before. So the decades you are going to live through will be fast and ferocious in terms of the amount of change that you will see, feel, and be able to bring about. But with all of that said, dear light hearts, we would say to you, remember, none of you are promised another day on this planet. And we say that not to be morose, but simply to remind you of the importance of energy and being in flow on a daily basis with an energy you want to be in. For if you are trying to build a better earth because you think the earth you are on is so wrong, you are not smelling the roses or feeling the joy. And if any of you were to be told you were not going to live past tomorrow, you would make very different choices about today. So we say all of this to help some of you let go of these linear ideas of where you are going and what you are trying to achieve. Because you may be thinking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ahead in your life, and yet linear time is in the washing machine right now on Earth compared to previous history, meaning things can change very fast, things can change on a dime, and that change energy both excites and scares you at the same time. It excites you because change feels very alive, and it scares you because change is a fearful thing for many human beings. For you enjoy comfort, you enjoy safety, you enjoy the known. So for many of you, walking this path of time in your history can feel like being on a tightrope, sometimes exhilarating and you feel you are flying high, and sometimes you are terrified you're going to fall over. be aware that that is simply the energy of your time. It is not as highly personal as many of you make it. You might think you are full of fear or hesitation about doing something right now, but that means so is everyone else. You are not alone in that fear or that feeling tremulous about the high energy of this time. So we say all of this to you to help you shake out what is important in your next step. If you are sitting there deciding that in a year or two you will, shall we say, impact the world in a bigger way, and in the meantime you just have to sit here and suffer through what you are suffering through now, we would invite you to realize, do not put off the ideas that you have or the desires that you have for another year. For these times are fast, and if you let your desire align with your action, you will be surprised how far it will take you. Meaning, let's say today you have a desire to be self-employed, but you have decided you need to stay in your job for 9 more months to make sure you have enough money and health insurance and all of those other things to be safe. Be open to the idea that just the fact you are having this thought, just the fact that you are clear about the desire, that timeline could greatly reduce because you are giving vision and energy to the fact that you have a feeling of what you would like to shift in your life. So we say to you, your dreams and your desires are very potent at this time. And it does not mean you will act on all of them. A good creative or a good visionary will have 8 ideas in a day, and they will actually choose to act on 1 or maybe 2 of them at most. The other ideas will go to other people to implement. For ideas are not usually singular. There are usually many dreaming of the same thing at the same time, which is why so many of you get annoyed when you see that someone else came out with the book with that wonderful title that you had 2 years ago. Don't worry, you didn't miss out. You just need to create something else. But many visionaries and creatives at this time need to understand the power they have to rearrange things in their life. And this year that we are speaking to you in, 2018, between the years of 2018 and 2022, rearrangement is going to be done at rapid speed on the planet, especially for those who are ready to change their lives as well as recognizing the planet is changing. Others are in fear that the planet is changing, and so they are clamping down on their lives even harder. They are digging their heels into their patterns even more because they are so scared of what they are seeing going on in the external world and not realizing they can swim with that tide and change with that tide. But for those of you who are ready to change, we just remind you, your linear mind may have worked out the timing or the form that your desire or your dream will come to you. If you have a strong desire or dream, we invite you to remind your linear mind that it does not have to have it all figured out. It may, in fact, have it figured out slightly wrong, and that's okay. It is just to recognize that your desires and your dreams, the more you vision with them, sit with them, feel them as truth week after week, they start to move the energy of your outer reality so that this desire and this dream can manifest faster. This is very important for change makers at this time, for you are being supported to make the changes you need to make to your personal life so that you can help shepherd the changes that your planet is going through, which will be very vast in the next 12 years. You will look back in 2030 and not quite believe how much change you have gone through since 2018. So be part of that change. You do not have to fear it. You do not have to fear you will miss your moment. Instead, be willing to get swept with that tide and the energy of that tide, and you will be surprised what will come to you. Good. So do you have any questions for us? For that is the message we wanted to give you, and now we are open to any questions you may have.
Thank you. That was such a beautiful message and very timely. I do have a couple questions. The first one is, all of us want to be living the life of our dreams, but so many feel they cannot because of our age, lack of money, while building something. And you kind of touched on this in your message, but how can we navigate through these limiting beliefs in order to live what's living in our hearts?
Well, firstly, to recognize that these limiting beliefs are not personal, they are collective. So, for example, how many of you have spoken to your friend about this idea that you've had, and your friend pours water all over it. The friend says, no, you cannot go off and run your own business. That is too hard. That will fail. That is risky. There may be another friend that you tell the same story to, and they are a little more encouraging. But remember, whenever people give you their opinions about what you want to do, unless they are tuning in for you on your behalf and really resonating with your energy field, many people who do not do that tend to be speaking of their own fear, their own belief, their own understanding. This is why many people in families have to prove themselves to the family, for often you manifest yourself in a family that is very different to you, and vice versa. They too experience you as very different to them, for you are all put together to learn. So often families cannot always support your dreams or desires because they are afraid that you will fail, or that it will not work, or they believe it cannot work. And that is why change comes in a family, when you live with each other long enough to trust that the wacky member of your family who you used to think was crazy actually has done very well for themselves and is making something that you couldn't possibly have thought would work in the world. And that changes the relationship too. So we would say never make it completely personal. Recognize that any fears you have about stepping forward are collective too, and be kind to yourself. When fears or doubts come up, love yourself with those fears and doubts and reaffirm your goals. So this is what we mean by sit with your dreams and desires regularly. For example, if at the beginning of the month you were to write down what you wish to manifest in that coming month, you would write it down on the paper, and then the stomach churn would begin. So let's say you wrote down, I wish to leave my job in the next 3 months. That would feel great when you wrote it down, for it's the truth and it lights you up and your body feels good about it. Then you go through several steps as to why you shouldn't leave the job, why you can't leave the job. All of the parts of you that are aligned with the job need to upshift. And often, if you are a sensitive soul, you feel every little shift that happens in your thoughts, in your feelings, in your ideas. So be mindful that change is a very felt process, and don't be afraid of that. Embrace the fact that there will be some days where you feel you cannot move toward your goal or your dream, but your higher self will know and help move you toward the fact that you can. So this is where practical exercises such as daily writing of your dreams, weekly writing of your dreams, or at worst case, monthly writing of your dreams will help to keep you on track and drive you forward. The more you practice creating affected change in your life, the more you get used to the process and a little less scared of the difficult side of things, the difficult emotions. We hope this helps.
Oh, very much so. Thank you for that. I have another question. So this one came from a friend, and it was, the idea that there are many who are not only waking up to the love and light, which is, just all the personal possibility that we have in our lives, but also these darker agendas on the planet. How do we move through that and not get too far on the dark side of what's happening?
For most of you, when the darker agendas get revealed to you, or shall we say first known, and you are in a time on the planet where the darker agendas are being revealed at a rapid rate to the mass, that can be quite the shock. It is a little like finding out your father is actually Darth Vader. We use this example for we know that it's a cultural reference many of you are familiar with. The good hero working for the light finds out that the villain that he has been facing all of this time is actually his father, and he did not know this. And there is a horror in that, for there has been a separation between good and dark. One thing that is positive for all of you in this is, even though this will not consciously land for many of you for many years, it is your understanding that, or you have been raised in a very dark light world. And for many of you, that's a shock, for you have either been trained to focus on the light, or learned to focus on the light, or not seen some of the inherent or undercurrent darkness that has existed in what you have been raised in and through. So the shock is, first of all, that darkness exists and that these agendas are strong. And there can be a grief process that is very healthy and necessary to go through. Shock, anger, denial, helplessness, feeling like a victim, feeling like there is no hope. And then, like any grief process, You go through the cycle and you come back to a 0 point or a balance point. And for many of you, it is that you become a little bit more informed about what you are dealing with and what some of the opposition will be to what you are doing. And in fact, the reason that the darker agenda has been revealed more and more at this time is so that it loses power. What can amplify for some of you is you suddenly see the agenda in things that you previously didn't, and that can be horrifying. So, for example, an action that is taken politically, or shall we say a world action that you recognize is coming from a dark place, it can make your blood turn cold in a way that previously you may have just been confused or thought this was a very disappointing choice. But actually what it does do for all of you is it serves to empower you. However, in the initial stages, it can feel disempowering, frightening. It can be a disillusion moment for you. And what we say, and you know this yourselves, all of you, you are here to create the light that is needed and the balm and the remedy that is needed, while you also work through and exorcise some of the shadow aspects of the planet that you have been raised in. So we tell you this because it has long been prophesied that this is a time where a lot of change will happen, and that dark agenda is starting to lose its grip. But it doesn't mean it's going to go easily or without a fight. So that is also part of the fear that some of you feel. You realize you are living in more of a time of revolution than you thought you would ever be in. And as you are in the early stages of that revolution right now, it is a little bit of a shock to the system. But we will tell you that every single day you continue to live, you will find the resources, the energy, and the tools inside you and outside you that will support you as you walk through and contribute to this very necessary light revolution.
Thank you. Thank you. I have one last question, and it's simple, I think. It's what words or concepts would you like humans, especially those who are change makers, to be working on or thinking about at this time? What's the most powerful medicine that we can hold?
We would say to you, firstly, that is a question and a good question to ask yourself personally. For all of you know the answer. And for all of you, it will be a little different. So for some of you, it could be confidence. And that might be what comes to you when you sit with this question. So we will ask everyone listening to sit with this question for a second. What is the most powerful thing that you could focus on right now or bring change through if you were aware of it in yourself? And focus on yourself. That is important. For if you focus on yourself, those of you who are change makers will then immediately take that alchemy and focus it on others outside you. So we would say on a planetary level, what all of you would do well to keep focusing on is to trust each piece of your personal journey, especially at these times that can seem very overwhelming in the wider world. It can feel like a lot is going on that is beyond your control, and that is true. However, it is not beyond your control in a way that should be threatening to you. It is simply you have become a more connected global planet. Therefore, you are suddenly dealing with far more information and understanding about other parts of the world than your parents and your grandparents were ever having. That is a lot for the system to deal with. And secondly, we would say that you focusing on your next step is you becoming the puzzle piece for this time that you elected to be here to be. So ask yourself the question personally, what is it that I could become next or focus on next that would be good for me and my life and would bring more light to my everyday existence and my ability to give light to others? If everyone were to focus on that and truly focus on that, give it some time, sit with it, let it move through them, they would be surprised at what would come. They would be surprised at how each illuminated individual would create a grid of illumination across the planet that will have a very strong vibrational effect on the mass.
That was beautiful. The whole thing was very beautiful. Thank you to the Z's.
A pleasure to be with you, and we commend you for what you and this tribe in this gathering are doing together. It is very light, it is very heart-based, and it does not mean that any of you need fear your shadow or your difficult moment. That is part of cleansing the old collective shadow in humanity, which served its purpose at the time that it was shall we say, installed in humans. But you are shedding as you are imbibing. You are bringing in more light, and you are shedding darkness that is no longer relevant for where your planet and your people are going next. So we commend all of you, and a pleasure to be with you. You are never here alone. You are needed, and now is your time. In peace and in love.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lovely to be with all of you. Very, very a nice light moment for me too in my day.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that word potent. That stuck out to me, and the lightness and everything that came through was so, so beautiful. So thank you, Lee, for being a channel. Thank you for being here, for being so willing, for saying yes without knowing many details. And I think the tribe is going to be so blessed by this conversation. So I'll put all the links where people can find you. I know you have a lot of, is there anything that you want to tell us about courses that are coming up or anything?
Yeah, so leeharrisenergy.com is my website, and I do a monthly free energy update. It's usually about 12 minutes long. It's a video where I just take the pulse of what's going on energetically. And then, yeah, I have various courses, but the one I have coming out, I think it will be late July or early August, is called Own Your Value. And that's kind of one of the reasons that you and I got talking about that on the call last week, because I'm deep in that now. How do we as change makers, healers, activists in the world own our value and our worth so that we can feed and fuel our mission and our community with owning that value in the right way. So that will be coming out soon.
Thank you. That's also a very timely message. And for everyone watching, thank you for tuning in again, and we will see you next time.